political will and courage.
All right, gentlemen, let's move on quickly. To say that the Ajaokuta steel complex in Kogi State meant to generate economic activities that are critical for industrialization in Nigeria is moribund, is to say the obvious. But what is shocking is that it still gobs billions in overhead costs from the national budget. Despite being inactive, report says Ajaokuta still boasts of a workforce with salaries of its employees running to 38.9 billion naira in 10 years. The lawmakers representing Kogi Central, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, is an indigene of the area and desirous to get the steel company revamped and working, made unscheduled visit to the complex and hardly found 10 people. She lamented that despite money spent on personal costs, no steel has been manufactured and no mill road at the complex. He's very surprised.
I was, some years back, I was in that complex. And throughout the day, I spent like, is it 2 or 3 days? Throughout my time there, I wasn't myself. I didn't know we have such a gigantic industrial complex built by Nigeria, but never put to work. Something that has built to about 90-something%. And if you spend the whole day, you know, visiting the place, you will just be wondering what happened to Nigeria. And every government is always talking about revamping, reviving, resuscitating Ajaokuta. And despite the fact that the future, the economic future of Nigeria is tied to it, no government has been able to do anything. No government has been able to achieve that, including do all sort of things. There is none that has been able to achieve anything. And it was built by the Russians, if I still remember very well. And what we need, when you look at it, you see that those who planned Nigeria really had good dreams for our country, good plans. How it is tied to the one in Oshogbo, the one in Delta, the one in other places, because we have rolling mills to feed from that mega
billet mill, the light
and
section,
all of that. But till today, all of them, which one is working? So when the people that are there are getting, I know many people, they spend their entire lifetime there, retired without doing anything.
But people say labor has to be paid. I mean, it's not their fault that the place is...
I understand, because they didn't employ themselves, and the political will to make it work is not on their own part. It's on the part of those who run affairs in the country. So I'm not blaming the workers. We are blaming the system. Nigeria, how we run Nigeria, I'm talking about those who have had the opportunity of governing Nigeria. If that place were to be their own property, would they run it that way? I know there are a lot of complex issues, behind it, but every problem can be solved if there is sincerity.
Okay. Adeoye, these salaries come from substantial annual budget from government for a country that should be managing its resources. What do you call this?
Well, I think the Ajaokuta steel rolling mill is the story of Nigeria. If you go and do study on Ajaokuta Steel Company, everything that has happened in that complex is just the story of Nigeria. It's management, corruption, favoritism, inefficiency. That is what that company represents. When this company was conceived, even though it was launched in 1979, the feasibility study was actually carried out in 1967. Because when Nigeria came out of colonial rule, there was a whole lot of hope. The biggest country in Africa, the biggest black nation. So a lot of people were interested to come and invest. The British first came in, then later the Russians, because Russia was emerging as a global power in industrialization. And they said, okay, if Nigeria really wants to be a great country, let's go into engineering and construction so that we can manufacture heavy-duty machines like caterpillars. We can produce automobiles. We can produce aeroplanes. We can build a country that will be the biggest country in Africa. And it was conceived at that time that it will employ 500,000 workers at full completion. And this is a place that sits on 24,000 hectares. You can imagine how big it is. A lot of funds were put into it. So when that feasibility study was done in 1967 by the Russians, then the military coup and everything destabilized, the hope and aspirations. And then there was an effort to revive it. So in 1979, it was eventually opened. And as of 1979, it was about, I think, 84% completed.
Yes.
That's 1983, sorry, when Shagari was living. 1983, 84% completed. So we're all very anxious to say, Nigeria will make it and all that. But suddenly, the Nigerian cancer came in again. People brought in all sorts of things, international collaborators that don't want the place to work. If this place works, how would they be able to bring their finished products here? Just like what is happening to Dangote today. And in 1994, it was about 98% completed.
No, I think the other is about 95.
Yes. So you see, and to the extent that even they made Julius Berger that built the railway to supply this and all that. But I was there. I wrote a story for the Punch newspapers, and I got lost. The whole complex. Say, Nigeria invested this kind of amount. But the problem we're having now is that some of those machineries that were brought in 20, 30 years ago, some of them are no longer relevant.
All right.
They're not relevant.
Adoye, let me put you on hold while we go on a commercial break. And when we come back, we will continue this particular conversation. Please stay with us, everyone. Thank you very much for staying with us on Journalist Hangout on Sunday. And I've been hanging out with Adewale Adeoye and Adekunle Yusuf. Gentlemen, let's round up for this conversation on Ajaokuta Steel. This administration is also trying to revamp the steel mill. And some experts are saying it's better for our government to sell it off.
If that is done, we will wait and see whether it works. But that will not be the first time. I think Obasanjo administration at that time did something similar before international legal issues, came up, and a lot of things, applications, all of that. So, but I'm not trying to rule it out that the problems cannot be solved. The problems can be solved if we have the right patriotism and the political will. Because the economic future of Nigeria is tied to that place. Without that place running, what's the fate of the rolling mills we set up all over the place? They're dead. Without those ones, how do we address in a country that does a lot of heavy constructions? We need machineries on a lot of things we can be doing locally. Look at how much our state government, federal government, spends on buying tractors, importing tractors and other farm implements. Things that we can do locally. We have the manpower. We have what it takes. We have the raw materials. But we allow Ajaokuta, as they call it there, to go moribund. Whatever is going to take, anybody, any government, probably this president, if he's able to solve that one, you will see that many things will change in our country.
All right, Adeoye, a total disposal of government partners with private investors.
I think government still needs to partner with whoever wants to buy it. The last we heard of this was 2019, when President Buhari and the Russian President Vladimir Putin met. And they both agreed that they were going to revive, through the Russian Business Center and Afri-Zem Bank. So if we can hold on to that policy, I think it may be able to help us. Because as we speak now, Nigeria imports steel worth $4 billion every year from South Africa, from China, Italy, and Switzerland. You can imagine if we have $4 billion being put into our economy every year. So the steel industry is the bedrock of industrialization. We cannot be talking of, and thank God we have the raw materials here, iron ore.
Yes, of course.
So we should not allow it to go.
All right.
But I would suggest that government should take it off from where President Buhari left it, to work with Russia.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. Let's move on quickly. It was the